Hello, welcome back. Welcome to the video on how Tableau work. We are going to introduce to the Tableau architecture. So we are going to see how Tableau architecture work. So that is very important to understand uh, optimization. If you want to do optimization, if you want to uh, explore the architecture, if you want to deep dive into the Tableau desktop application, you need to have the understanding over Tableau desktop and how it exactly works so that you can use uh, optimization and how exactly the data flows at the back end. That if you want to build that understanding, this uh, understanding over architecture is very important. So let's understand this architecture from front to back. What do you mean by front to back? So at the bottom you can see these are the users like us which are querying something over Tableau desktop. So if you are creating something, if you are browsing something, those are the clients for our whole architecture. At the bottom you can see there are the customer data. So there is a layer, last layer for a customer data. If you want to connect to data warehouse, if you are querying to the data warehouse, if you want to connect to data marts, if you are connecting to directly flat files, or if you want to connect to the cubes, that can be possible with the help of Tableau. So if let's say we have flat file, that is a Excel file, and if you want to connect to Excel file, and if you want to quickly see over here at the bottom for the clients, that what information or what insight we can create with the help of this. So let's create that cool insight with the help of architecture. So let's say one of the user is querying something from its desktop or a mobile application. That request is going to be there in the gateway and load balancer. So gateway and load balancer are the two processes. Those are helpful whenever we want to, if you want to queue something, if you want to uh, queue the request or response, and if you want to pass those requests and response to the internal architecture, this gateway and load balancer will be helpful to manage your request and response. At the bottom, whenever we are if you want to connect to Excel file, let's say if you want to connect to flat file, that is Excel file, we need a connector to connect that file, right? So those are actually a SQL connector at the back end. Those are helpful whenever we are connecting to Excel file. Whenever we are connecting to cubes, if you have cubes database and if you want to connect to those cubes, we have different type of connector that is called as MDX connector. So multi-dimensional cubes connector is useful whenever we are connecting to that kind of data. If you are connecting to other data sets or a type of data source, that SQL connector is more than enough, and that is inside Tableau desktop. You don't need to write something for a connection, so that easily available over here. You can directly use that username and password and the IP address or the URL of your Tableau server or data server, whichever we have published. So you use that credential and URL of your server to connect that data source. Let's say we have connected to Excel. That SQL connector is taking care of what we want to pull from the data. And one of the option we already seen that there are multiple type of connection that we can create whenever we are talking to a data set. So we can create live connection or extract connection. In the live connection, this SQL connector is directly going to contact or communicate with that data source. In another way, we are going to use this extract connection. If you want to create that extract connection, Tableau is automatically going to replicate or copy that data set inside data engine, fast data engine. So that copy of data is going to pull inside data engine to process that information. So what exactly the responsibilities of data engine? So data engine is responsible for creating extract, and whatever request the user had passed, processing those query is one of the responsibility of data engine. So right now, till now, we have connected to that Excel file from the backend, and we have pulled that data set with the help of extract. We have copied that data set into a data engine. So what is this repository? A repository is metadata information about that data source. So everything related to connection information, data size, data type, what kind of data we have inside that. So everything related to metadata is stored inside repository. So this is what we have inside data connector layer. So let's say once we have selected our data set, we want to connect it to Excel. We have defined our connection window. We have pulled that data into the data engine. We have data inside our Tableau. And then if you want to process something, if let's say any user who is browsing for a dashboard, and that processing is handled by main component. So you can see the third row, data server, SQL server, and application server. So let's deep dive into this one by one. So whenever we are talking about data servers, data server manages the connection information. So anything what we have connected to any data set, that connection information and caching and everything is stored over here in the data server. So those are very helpful whenever we are talking about talking to data engine or SQL server, or communicating and requesting and responding to data and the client. The data server is again very important. The second component inside the main component is vSQL server. So vSQL server is very important. So what is vSQL? A word that is Visual Basic Query Language. So at the back end, Tableau create whenever you are querying something over a Tableau desktop. Whenever if you are clicking on region and then sales values, so those are going to be form a SQL query at the back end. That is actually a Visual Basic SQL query. So what you so once that query is generated, it is this process, that is vSQL server process, is responsible for loading view and rendering that view into the canvas. So whatever, whenever we click on any of these dimension and measure, whatever it creates on the canvas, it is what the output of vSQL server execution of that query. So that is what the responsibility of vSQL server, to compute and execute the queries and loading and rendering those views. That is what the responsibility of vSQL server. So once that execution is done, once we have connected to data, when once we have executed and render something, then it comes to the application server. So application server is responsible for handling REST API calls or JavaScript API calls, or any user who is browsing through the content, or any user who is developing something. So those request and everything or browsing is handled by application server. So whatever you see over there on the desktop right now, that is actually application server that you are seeing. So anybody who is requesting from front, that request is going to be to through the gateway to the application server, and an application server is going to push those requests into the backend to the data. That is how it flows. So understanding those each and every process over here in the architecture is very important with respect to uh, the understanding of architecture. So that is what we have inside how it work video. So basically we have covered each and every process over here and architecture of Tableau.